Hello, everybody. So, found out something fascinating that the triads come from a group called the Hongmen. That might sound familiar, but Hong is very common in Chinese. So, these Hongmen are apparently called from the Three Unities Society, and that was inspired by Masonic freaks and their criminal inclinations. Isn't that fascinating? So Masons, through a roundabout way, ended up killing Bruce Lee and his son, the Crow. Brandon Lee. Ripped to two real ones. Like, good God, ripped to a real one when Bruce Lee. Holy fuck. That's just goes to show the pettiness of some of these freaks. Well, you may be one of the coolest and most inspiring people in the world, but I got a gun. Okay, and oh yeah, you will destroy the monuments all over the world to make way for the fucking ancient aliens theories that you're cooking up to fool people, right? Oh well. One time I ran through an entire field of saw palmettos for shits and giggles. It was pretty scratched up, but it was exhilarating. Here's the thing, you do not want to slide frictionlessly through life. You want resistance. And this is a big thing that I'm getting into with AI. AI as entertainment. Instead of finding the entertaining factors or hunting for entertaining features in reality, which requires a little bit of patience, it requires a little bit of space in between, people can just type in whatever they want and get a crude simulacra of what they're looking for. So they can force anybody to say anything that they want them to say for comedic purposes. They can force pictures to exist for comedic purposes that otherwise wouldn't exist. And so everything goes onto the baseline of readily available slop. You see how that works? It's not any sort of like artisan procured special moments that actually you can clip together to get people roaring laughing. It's just this fucking slop. You take one bite, it's just like, oh yeah. By the time you get like halfway through, you're sick. And that's interesting. That's very, very interesting. There was a guy who popped up in the chat. In the comments. Called Sigseg V. Now I remember this guy because we got into a fight one day before he got door knocked. And I give you my word, Sig, that I had nothing to do with that, man. I have never called the cops on anybody. I've never pressed charges on anybody. And I would certainly never call the FBI on anybody. So you got that happening to yourself because Kiwi Farms was monitored for terrorist activity. That is exactly how that happened. But Null got a email from the FBI. About his, or the CIA since he was living overseas at the time. He's been living in a Slavic apartment for like 5 years, and before that he was living in Australia. So he does not get to claim Florida man status in any way, shape, or form. Genuinely, I'm serious about that. I'm not joking about that. So, Sigseg V was banned because, it's a little bit of uncomfortableness for Null, so he's going to immediately just wipe it clean, but a lot of people missed him a lot, and I missed him too. Like, I genuinely enjoyed spending time with Sig. He was very funny. And one time I even asked him if he could teach me how to code in Python. He's good at coding. And he didn't really respond to that because naturally, like, who the fuck are you? I was pretty new when all this was happening. And we'd have good times and we'd have bad times. And one time we got into a pretty big fight. And it was coincidentally right before he got door knocked. So he might be upset with me for having something to do with that. I give you my word. I had nothing to do with that, man. I swear. So, Sig is back in the DM groups of Kiwi Farms. Now, that is that's the gutter. That's the gutter. But the gutter was a lot colder without our boy Sig. And I just hope that the Kiwi Farms that he's missed for 2 years hasn't gone away and been replaced with AI slop. It's not it's genuinely not funny if it's AI slop. That's the main thing on the menu there. I'm serious. And it looks like it's just replaced all the good natural procurement that takes some time and takes some patience. And what do you know? What's more popular? What gets more clicks and views and reactions and eyes? It's the AI slop. It's the gritty, shitty, mechanical music. It's the nasty, slick, and dead pictures. Yeah, I hope he's not inheriting that coming back. You know, we actually were able to hear his voice because they were passing around clips of Sig's voice, and he either sounds Italian, Jewish, or maybe French. That's what it sounds like. Also sounds like he needs to do some bush training. But all love, bro. Like, I'm glad to see you. Glad to have you here. I'm glad you're okay. Glad you're not in trouble. Stay out of trouble. Genuinely stay out of trouble, please. How sloppy OpenAI has been with this killing and the extreme backfiring of the Boeing killings, it really does show just how tenuous the ground all this is built on. And well, you know, I don't like kicking a man while he's down. So, like, a lot of people were making fun of Sig for 2 years. I wasn't. Maybe, I can't swear that I did, maybe 2 or 3 times. I joined in cracking a joke if there was a joke to be cracked. But in general, I do not like kicking a man while he's down. And so it gives me no pleasure to say that Elon Musk is a good example of the fact that a lot of the stuff that people have been presented for the last decade is built on towers of sand. It's built on CGI. And when CGI got, like, passed over to the AI departments, all of that shit, I'm serious, like, that is what did it. CGI took time. And although, like, everything was weird and blank and oddly shiny, there was still a process by which people were putting things in place piece by piece, like a set, you know, like a miniature train village. But nowadays, it's as if, you know, you tossed all the Legos at the board, and then they magnetically arrange themselves in a certain way, and you're just like, done. People can't fall for that. As I said in a previous episode, even the boomers are becoming aware of AI because it's that sloppy. You know, CGI was able to fool them on a lot of things, but AI, that's like it. There's parts of the brain that still are active that can tell you that's not possible, that's not real, that's not funny, that's not interesting. And the not level in AI overwhelms the natural feelings that people get when they watch funny shit, when they learn about the world, when they have a well-constructed, well-edited video placed in front of them and they go, I like that. You can't get that with AI, and I don't think you ever will be able to get that with AI without putting some extreme level of human engineering, as if you were engineering it yourself. Now, I've said previously that AI can be useful for automating the things that just take time away from people and allow them to take time away from coders and allow them to do more intense stuff, but that's not what's being used for. It's being used to replace the actual artisan work, the coding, the sound work, seriously, I've watched and I've looked at entire video games that are made sound, graphics, and storyline with AI. Somehow they managed to grab like 50 lawsuits worth of real stuff and put it into their game. But it was called I Want to Believe. You can probably find that. When it comes to evolution, phrasing is important. Would you look at a beautiful girl and tell her, you have favorable traits for breeding, or your father must have selected your mother for papa? No, you say, look how beautiful you are. You have grown these beautiful features because you are beautiful. You are beautiful. It's not this, oh, the fish that you came from must have been very successful. Nobody needs to think that way, and it's definitely not necessary to think that way in order to believe things like the fact that it's taken millions of years for human beings to look as beautiful as they are. And we're certainly very, very... See, the human form of the European, with dove's wings, angelic art, has always been a replacement for the real angels that are in the Bible, which are like insane... architects like you would find in the pantheon of Hinduism. Those are legitimate angels and demons, whereas these cherubim and flying angels and stuff, like how Archangel Michael is often depicted, is not at all accurate. It's highly projected, anthropomorphized, like we're projecting Orion on a cluster of stars. It is not applicable at the end of the day. The reality, just as the cluster of stars in Orion, is far more complex and advanced than anything that we can project on there with our simple little assumptions. We have to stack it into a scientific process, and that takes time and that takes effort. You can't cheat that shit. It's as simple as that. You know, kings had to be vetted by the Vatican, whose leader was elected. They were elected through a democratic process. And to think that that's not democracy is insane. The modern democratic process is just rule by whoever can genocide the most amount of Catholics. That's modern democracy. That's what it's based on. That's how it popped up in the late 15th century in Germany. And that's how it popped up in the Netherlands and in London. It's just based. And that's exactly how you get... It started with 800 years in Ireland, 800 years in Spain, right? So I was connecting these two. There was 800 years of the Reconquista. Around the same time, you have the harrowing of the Irish, friendly fire. And the Reconquista is not friendly fire. But what all this does is it sets up like a contingent normalization of rule by genocide, rule by replacement, which is something that the Almoravids started. So you can necessarily trace it all the way back to the Fatimid Caliphate, but all that was started by Crusader orders that can be traced to proto-Masonic groups that were violating various laws and having polyamorous orgies, and that's exactly where you get the veneration of the Virgin Mary. It was directly designed to replace the specific, culture around the veneration of the Virgin Mary, is specifically designed to replace what the Knights Templar sort of rituals of taking a new woman every year and writing poetry to her and having sex with her despite the fact that she wasn't your wife. Basically hedonism too. You know, if you want to picture what the Knights Templar were up to, it was basically hedonism too. And I was talking about Frankists. That's where that comes from. Frankism is relatively new. You know, it's in the time of secularism, there was this guy who declared himself the Jewish Messiah, and what do you know? He ended up converting to Islam later in his life. Ain't that funny? So I got some notes here. Moral compass is a great concept because it accurately outlines that morality is an objective thing, and if its poles were to switch, there would be a nigh-apocalyptic consequence. It also indicates how science can be used to refine tools that animals just feel without needing tools. The more intelligent we get, the more our brains tend to go upwards and away from the foundation that animals just feel, sort of almost an electromagnetic pulse that, well, not necessarily pulse, but an electromagnetic current and a almost telepathic thing that people can project with their eyes, in between their eyes. People have experimented with this for a very long time. If you deprive people of the ability to speak language in experiments, they will be tremendously more sensitive. That's exactly what you see in monastic orders around the world, whether it's Zen or Christianity or Sufis. If you concentrate yourself over long periods of time, if you go out into the desert for 40 days and fast, you will come back far more sensitive, far more brilliant, because you have tapped back into your more primordial senses. And that's not something to necessarily be afraid of, because that's where we come from, and that's something grew by God. But a lot of Christians are afraid of that, and that's the big thing about the inversion of Zen and the inversion of Christianity, is you take these incredibly powerful, incredibly intelligent organizations, and you invert them, and you reverse engineer them and weaponize them to your own personal ends. If you're not a child who is in the process of being violently shaken by your Zionist parent, then you know criticism of Israel isn't directed towards every Jew. Now, there will be those who are always anti-Semitic or trying to take advantage. Although I do see the argument that it was difficult to be a German after 1946, most people aren't like Spielberg, who can just take the knife and twist it and twist it and twist it and be so happy when the gold coins pour down on him. Most people aren't like that. Most people are genuinely not like that. And the people who think they're like that, like the Andrew Tate stans, they are so incapable of doing what people like Spielberg did that they're not really that much of a worry in my book. Imagine being the only child of a single mom who's living with 5 other guys because she thinks she's a polyamorous manic pixie dream girl. The guys are all Proud Boys who can't jack off outside of the presence of a woman, and the house just reeks of beer and chlorine. Ugh. Ugh. Yucky. Well, that seems to be that. Oh! Check this out. The old executive suite, B25 Mitchell. Ain't that neat? That was my grandfather's. It wasn't even an Air Force when he signed up, so it was Army Air Corps. I made it Air Force after World War II. Bombed the shit out of some Nazis, bombed the shit out of some Italians. Yep. Got some shrapnel in his leg. Hey, he wanted to coordinate the run. He said it was his hubris that he paid for when he got shrapnel in his leg. Oh well. It is what it is. He lived to a long, healthy, happy life. Alrighty then, before I eat too much on the camera, I'm gonna take off. See you folks.